I want to welcome you to Untermyer Gardens in Yonkers, New York. My name is Stephen Burns. I'm the chairman of the Untermyer Gardens Conservancy, and I want to share this great garden with you and its history. The gardens were part of an estate called Greystone, which was built around the Civil War, and the estate was sold in 1899 to Samuel Untermyer. Samuel Untermyer was one of the most successful lawyers in America and was reputedly the first lawyer to earn $1 million on a single legal case. So Untermyer was a very ambitious man, very successful, and one of his great passions was horticulture. Having acquired another parcel of land to the north, he decided to create a great garden. He went to Wells Bosworth, who was a noted architect in New York, to ask him if he would design gardens for him at Yonkers. The main garden, which is called a Grecian garden, is actually a Persian garden. And if you look at it from the outside, it is walled with crenellations on the walls. At the center entrance is a large tower, and all of this conveys a feeling of Assyrian architecture or Persian architecture. Persian gardens are the oldest gardens known to man. They are based on the concept of the Garden of Eden or of paradise. There's a description in the book of Genesis on page 2 of the Bible of the Garden of Eden, which describes it as a walled garden, and within the walled garden are the 4 ancient rivers, the Tigris, the Euphrates, and 2 mythical rivers. Over many centuries, Persia becomes Islamic. And so what were Persian gardens, maybe Zoroastrian gardens, became Islamic gardens. And when Islam spreads, those gardens go with it. So when you go west into Spain, for instance, you get great gardens like the Alhambra, which have walls very similar to what you see at Untermyer. If you go east from Persia, remember Islam spread into India and the great Mughal gardens, of which the greatest was the Taj Mahal. If you look closely at the plans of Untermyer Gardens and the Taj Mahal, you see a great affinity. At the exterior of the main entrance to this garden is a relief of Artemis. Artemis was a Greek goddess of nature associated with the hunt and fertility. And so when you pass under her watch, you're going into a land of fertility and life, with the bubbling waters simulating the creation of life. The East Stoa introduces you now to classical Hellenistic architecture, in which we see the first of the 3 orders of classical architecture, the Doric, which is the most elemental, the most severe and refined. At the end of the garden are 2 pairs of columns in Cipollino marble, sporting the beautiful sculptures of sphinxes carved by Paul Manship. Paul Manship was one of the most important sculptors in early 20th century America, who sculpted the Prometheus Unbound at Rockefeller Center. Sphinxes are used to guard things that are precious, and in this garden, what was precious is the amphitheater, which represents the seat of culture. Notice the magnificent stage, which has the most intact polychromatic mosaic flooring. Those paired columns with the sculptures on top of them are based on, but actually superior to, similar columns at the Boboli Gardens in Florence.
My name is Polo Stefano. I'm retired founding director of horticulture at Wave Hill, which is a public garden just a few miles away from here, down in the Bronx, the Riverdale section of the Bronx, where I was for 34 years. I've been retired for 10 years, and in my retirement, the last year and a half or so, I've gotten involved here at Untermyer, and this is a very exciting and rewarding project. I first came to know Untermyer Gardens when I was a student at the New York Botanical Garden. I was here in the mid-60s when there had been a great restoration of all the mosaics. 2 years ago, Steve Burns called me and said he was starting up the conservancy, and was I interested in pro bono work with him as a plant consultant, and I said absolutely, and it's been great fun. It's wonderful working with Steve, whose enthusiasm is unbelievable, and the same can be said for Timothy.
I'm the horticulturist here at Untermyer Gardens. I'm here thanks to the Untermyer Garden Conservancy, who have partnered with the city of Yonkers to create a full-time position to stay here at Untermyer to help restore the gardens to some semblance of the vision that Samuel Untermyer had originally intended, which was to really create one of the finest gardens in the world. The city has limited resources, and the Untermyer Garden Conservancy is really in its infancy, but it seems that there's a chance to create a truly valuable resource, not only for the Yonkers community, but to create a real destination garden for the country, if not the entire world.
The reason that this is working, the reason that this park is actually starting to become relevant again, is because of the partnership with Untermyer and the city of Yonkers working together. When I take people from outside of Yonkers, they're surprised and they go, wow.
Proceeding on past the amphitheater, going south to the great temple, which we call the Temple of the Sky. Notice the capitals, the architecture is Corinthian, the columns are fluted, and the capitals have a very delicate leafy design, which are based on acanthus plants, which we've now planted in adjacent beds. The floor of that temple has a beautiful gradated mosaic featuring a figure of Medusa. If you look out over the ruined swimming pool, look at the beautiful mosaics. The mosaics here are apparently based on those at Hadrian's Villa in Tivoli, and there are many sea creatures. There are turtles, lobsters, octopus, snails, fish, crabs, just a tantalizing, wonderful, rich mosaic, unfortunately all buckling and in need of replacement. As you come down past the pool to the lower level, there's a parapet straight in front of you. There's a small gate to the left, and then there is a portico on the right. And it is there that one of the most famous events ever took place under the Untermyer's hospitality, which was a spectacular ballet of the Isadora Duncan dancers. Men and women dressed up in formal attire, watching the dancers in bare feet dancing on the grass. At the end of this portico is a small little gate, which is where you must go. There's no place else to go. And what happens is you go through that gate and boom, there is this drop-dead, spectacular view of the Vista. And the Vista consists of about 140 or 150 stairs, very gradual, going down the slope. It is very overgrown now. You have to imagine a very clear view down to the Hudson River with the Palisades in the distance and tall cryptomeria flanking it on either side. This feature was based on the Villa d'Este in Lake Como. So as you go down the steps to the Vista, you don't really sense what was on the right side. On the right side now, of course, is a hospital. But beyond that, as you go down the hill, there were 6 color gardens that were accessible through gaps in the stepped wall. Each garden was planted with a different color scheme. So there would have been a white garden, a blue, red, yellow, etc. They were all different shapes. They were all aligned axially with stairs. Many of them had fountains, so as you walked down the Vista, you would hear the sound of water bubbling, and you could weave your way in and out from the color garden back to the Vista, then back to another color garden, and so on down to the lowest color garden. At the bottom of the Vista, not only do you have a beautiful view to the Hudson River, but there are 2 monumental treasures, ancient Roman monolithic columns about 25 feet tall, made of Cipollino. To my knowledge, there is nothing of their equal in America, possibly the Western Hemisphere. These are columns that are made of one piece of stone 2,000 years ago, and to place them here at the bottom of this most stupendous feature almost of the garden, which is the Vista, is truly monumental. At the very bottom of the Vista, you can see there's a lower gate off the aqueduct, and from that you can encounter 2 sculptures in heavy relief. There's one of a lion and another one of a headless horse. And those sculptures are attributed to Edward Clark Potter, who was the sculptor of the 2 lions in front of the New York Public Library on 5th Avenue and 42nd Street. Toward the end of Samuel Untermyer's life, in 1938-39, there was a huge wedge of evergreen that was planted, which cast a shadow, and then an array of flowers, all spelling out the numerals in Roman script by which you could tell the time. And there's a wonderful photograph we have of Samuel Untermyer as a very old man setting his watch by the sundial. One of the most stupendous features in the garden is the Temple of Love, created totally by man out of gigantic boulders, all pinned together with bridges and small caves. Very interactive. You can kind of walk up and around and through it, surmounted by the Temple of Love with a beautiful wrought iron filigree dome. And as you climb up and sweep around it, you can imagine this with a gigantic water feature with water trickling down from various courses. You can sort of see the steps of the stone where the water would come down into the pond at the bottom. There's a monolithic bridge that you pass over, and from there, the pond, the water trickled down to the pump house.
In 1 year, we've managed to turn around the look of the place completely. It's really kind of the jewel in Yonkers' crown.
We have limitless things that we want to do. This is probably a multi-decade restoration project.
It will be a lifetime of work to take it back to some semblance of what Untermyer had done.
But it doesn't take necessarily that much money. It takes devotion, and I think here, that's what you see.
Now it's up to you. It's up to you to help us restore this park to what it was 100 years ago, but we can't do it strictly on municipal dollars.
Get on board. Be behind us. Be behind the effort to bring this back and make it the great garden that it once was. We need places like this within our cities more and more. It's happening in Manhattan. Why can't it happen in Yonkers?